Welcome to Restaurant Catering Smarts, your go-to podcast for restaurateurs looking to better operate and grow their catering profit centers. With every episode, you can count on expert advice, innovative strategies, and tasty tips straight from industry leaders. Our purpose is to help your business thrive. So, let's dig in to another juicy episode.
Hello again. I am Michael Attias, your host of Restaurant Catering Smarts, and today's guest is Deborah Miller, the founder and force behind Deborah Miller Catering and Events, one of New York City's most creative and fast-growing catering companies. Deborah is leading the charge into new territory, especially in the booming wedding market. Her team has carved out a strong niche in micro weddings, intimate, high-impact events that are becoming big business, and we're excited to have her on the show today. But before we get started, let's take a minute to recognize our sponsor, CaterZen Catering Software. They help restaurants turn their catering chaos into calm. Discover why restaurants trust CaterZen to save them time and increase sales. Go to caterzen.com and sign up for a walkthrough of the software. Now let's dive into this episode of Restaurant Catering Smarts. Welcome, Deborah. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Good. Thanks for being here. I know you're in New York City and I'm down in Florida. So what is it they say? People from New York come to Florida to die? Is that sort of the joke?
I mean, that is kind of true.
God's waiting room?
Lots of people go there to retire. Let's say it nicer.
I don't know. I tend to have a little warped sense of humor, so we can go for either. I told you I wasn't as. You're probably nicer than I am.
Maybe. I don't know.
Probably. Okay, so I like an icebreaker question. Give me a number between 1 and 300.
19.
19. A gift I can give to others is.
Wow. A gift I can give to others is kindness.
Ooh, that's a good one. And maybe a homemade chocolate chip cookie.
Of course. Well, that's kind too. I mean, a homemade chocolate chip cookie is kindness.
It is. So it's funny how I'm sure in your life, people have come in and out or they're connected, one way or another. So there's this girl that I would go out with in high school. I mean, it was nothing serious. And her mother, I grew up in Memphis. Her mother's from Arkansas. She was like a pageant queen. And anytime I took her daughter out, she would either have a fresh baked plate of cookies or brownies. So when I brought her home, and I was like, I loved her mom. I mean, like, how can you not love that? So fast forward, one of my friends, best friend, I've known him since I was 3. He's a poker player. And he tells me, he goes, yeah, I'm playing in a poker game once every couple of weeks with a bunch of old guys. I go, is it high stakes? He goes, no, it's like $10. And these guys are all like, they have money. Turns out that one of the guys in the game is that girl's father. That's how crazy life is. Anyway, I get off on these tangents. So tell me how you got into the catering business.
Oh, how I got into the catering business. I've loved cooking and food from pretty much when I was really tiny, 10, 11. And my dad had a Greasy spoon takeout spot in New York City. And so I grew up in the food business and I loved cooking and I loved hospitality, making people happy. I went to the Culinary Institute. I joined my family's nightclub business. And then after over a decade of that, I started a family and decided that maybe the nightclub business in the late 80s wasn't really the right place to be. So I took over my dad's Greasy spoon and turned it into a higher end sort of what is now very common and popular, but then was not. Fresh food, made daily, served, menu changing all the time. And that just very organically over a very long time grew into what we are today.
I feel like I should be interviewing you about all the good stories you have from the nightclub days.
You could. That would be a whole other fight.
I know, but, I think people are always, like, the first thing I think of is when you say nightclub New York, Studio 54, lines of cocaine, bottles of champagne, crazy stuff. Without naming names, unless you feel like it, what is the craziest story from or memory from the nightclub business?
Without naming names, a very famous actress came into the nightclub very, very high and ended up inviting us back to her home. And the next day she went into rehab.
Wow.
It
Well,
was crazy. I mean, it was a crazy time.
that's pretty cool. Did she ever come back to the nightclub after that, after rehab?
No.
Well, that's good. Because a lot of times it's a revolving door. They say it takes like 5, 6, 7, 8. You know, the only rehab I'd need to go into is for eating too many sweets or, you know, and no one's going to get upset because, you know, you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you got cookie crumbs on your stomach. I mean, you know, nobody's going to put you in rehab for that. Okay, so you opened up, you took, we'll call it the Greasy Spoon. So it was like pot roast and
Deb's.
huh?
It was a little 400 square foot space, and we named it Deb's.
Okay. And what made you decide to branch off from the family? And when you say Greasy Spoon, I'm assuming like, was it like a diner type of place?
Tiny little place. So it was really just takeout with like, a counter with 5 stools. When my dad was running it, it was in a neighborhood that was the printing district. And so it was it was a real blue collar kind of spot. When I took it over, that neighborhood was changing and turning into a neighborhood, like a neighborhood in
Right.
Manhattan. And I completely revamped it, renovated. And then every day was a different menu, which is insane and stupid for food costs, but it was what I wanted to do because I just love food and I like to be creative. And so we made, we had breakfast. It was breakfast and lunch because I had a young family, and so
Right.
it was Monday through Friday. It worked for the family and for me, and it was really fun actually.
So what made you decide to go, I don't know if it was, you called it, if the term farm to table was even alive then. What made you decide fresh, homemade, change the menu? What made you decide to go 180 from the family business?
I guess that was my passion and my dream. I just was following. I'm a pretty jump in and figure out what's going to happen later kind of person. So I did what I loved and prayed and it worked. I mean, I think when you do what you love and you put in the time and the energy and you have the passion, most of the time, if you're patient, things work out.
Yeah, I've always told people I'm an overnight success after 40 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I started off as a dishwasher. I wouldn't be in the software business if I didn't start off as a dishwasher. If I started off in a men's retail clothing store, I would have never known about the challenges of the restaurant business and started that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about did you do catering? I'm assuming you didn't have much room to do catering. When did you get into the catering business?
I never even thought about catering. To be honest, it wasn't like on my radar. I was in my 30s. I had this young family. I was making a living and doing what I loved. But then the neighborhood really started to change, and there were a lot of media companies moving into the neighborhood and larger law firms. And so catering came to me. And then we opened up a branch at a different location where we just did catering.
So was it mostly corporate drop off Monday through Friday, breakfast, lunch, afternoon breaks?
Yes. And that location was down at the seaport. And so, and we were growing beautifully. Like the catering business was really, the corporate drop off catering business was just booming. And then Hurricane Sandy happened and literally washed our kitchen away.
Wow.
Because we were on the East River and there was no longer a kitchen after Hurricane Sandy. But we're resilient. Resilient is a word I use a lot. So we found a new location, and that's where we are today. 5,000 square foot like kitchen that we built out, and then grew into more. We slowly started to grow from just the drop off sandwich salads type breakfast type thing to larger corporate events.
Are you still doing the corporate? Is it still part of the mix?
We're still doing corporate, and we're still doing a tiny bit of the drop off, um, which I don't know they will ever be able to completely eliminate the drop off, but it's less than 10% of our business now.
Is that by COVID, by design, by happenstance, by...
So pre-COVID, we were, like literally had our busiest year ever in 2019. Um, and then COVID, I mean, corporate drop-off catering really didn't exist, obviously, during COVID. Um, it's very rare to have an opportunity to be going, 90 miles an hour and then just stop and be able to think about what you want to, what it's going to look like next. And I think it was just a natural progression to grow the business away from the corporate drop off and grow more of the corporate events and the social events. And we had that opportunity because we literally had nothing post COVID.
Did you have a sales rep or marketing person when you were doing the corporate drop off?
We did.
And
We
how
had
did
a-
that work? Because a lot of my clients, did you still have the restaurant at this time? At some point, did you shut the restaurant and just focus?
We did have I wouldn't call it a restaurant, but we did have the little takeout shop. But of course, that also stopped because there were nobody was going into the office. And so there was really, and we had an incredible landlord who was really, really kind. But at some point we realized that it was never going to be what it was before. So we gave that up sort of slightly post COVID.
Did your takeout shop feed your corporate drop off business?
I guess initially, I think, no, not in the later years, not in like the late 2017, 2018. I think that the drop off business was different. It had a different name. It was different.
So, I found there's two types of salespeople. I didn't come up with this term. There's farmers and there's hunters. The farmers, the phone rings, they're good with the relationship, they're good with the upselling, customer support, that kind of thing. And then the hunters, they're knocking on doors, they're making things happen, they're opening up accounts. That law firm you've tried for 3 years to get, they finally crack in because there was a problem with the caterer before. Did you have a hunter or a farmer working for you?
Oh, it's
or
very
how
hard
many
to
did you have?
It's very, very hard to find hunters. Farmers are succumb. Like I will tell you that most of them, we had, I think, at that time, we had 3 very good farmers. I try very hard, and I still, my philosophy is you reach out to people as often as you want to until they tell you to stop calling them. But even now, more than ever, this generation, they don't even want to get on the phone, let alone call people that don't really want them to be, don't want to talk to them. So getting people to understand that sales is sales. And yes, hunting is very, very important. It's a skill.
Did you have any hunters, or pretty much it was word of mouth and it just
It was
expanded?
pretty much word of mouth. I mean, we had like low-level hunters, let's say.
I gotcha. So they were hunting prey in captivity. They weren't out in the wild.
Let's just say warm leads. They weren't going after anything cold. They would definitely be comfortable with warm. If somebody referred us or they were already in a building and they would, stop in on a different floor, they felt comfortable doing that. But, word of mouth is really all you really need at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would agree with that. In the beginning, you've got to get your name out there, but if you do a good job, then word of mouth spreads and helps you build. And obviously, you have transitioned from a 400 square foot takeout counter to a whole, catering company.
Yeah. But I would say that now the team we have is exceptional. We've built a team of, operationally, sales, culinary, marketing. The culture is so important. The collaboration, the working together, the love of food, the love of hospitality, the love of both food, hospitality, and structure and systems, because they sort of, without all four of those, you don't have the continuity and the success of events.
Yeah. So let's talk about systems because, my background is I worked for Corky's Barbecue in college. I was one of their first franchisees. Talked somebody into writing $1 million check. I never open, run, manage a restaurant. And I'll share where I got my systems mindset from. But where did you learn that? Because I'm guessing, was that taught at the CIA? Is it something
I will tell you, I am not a systems person. I am all creative, all like love, kindness, delicious joy. I hire people who are systems people because I am the most not systems person you'll ever meet.
Yeah, but where did that come from? Because I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and let's say they're creative and they focus on that. The minute you even try to introduce systems, they're the bottleneck, right? They're like, they get in the way of that happening. So what precipitated you saying like, look, I know what I'm good at and I'm going to I know I need systems and I'm going to hire someone to do that. Where did that come? That's not a natural skill, especially for a highly creative person.
I guess, yeah, you're right. It took a while. I probably was the cog in the wheel for a little while, but you start to see the light when you want to grow, and you want to be high touch, and you want to be bespoke, and you want to really have like a high level of hospitality. You do start to realize that you can't just make great food. It doesn't work without the systems. And I've been really lucky to find the people that aren't like me. They kind of have the right left brain, because I couldn't work with people that didn't love food the way I love food. But they also have like the brain that understands the systems.
Yeah. So have you ever heard of a guy named Michael Gerber who wrote the E-Myth Revisited?
No.
So I read his book. I often laugh. I've got some friends and their kids do travel sports. And I'm like, the good thing about being a Jewish father, my kids couldn't play sports. So I didn't have to spend my weekends running around in hotel rooms and stuff. But when I was younger, I never played sports. So I'd go to the bookstore and get business books and just devour them. That was always read Inc. magazine. And I remember reading Michael Gerber, The E-Myth, and he talked about whether he used McDonald's as an example, whether you want to have one hamburger stand or 10,000, you have to have replicable systems to grow and manage. And as a result of that, when I opened up my first restaurant, they didn't have checklists. I built checklists I laminated them with a dry erase marker. And, this is how you open the restaurant, and you got to hit this on the control panel, and turn this on and do this and do that. And I've always liked systems. And let's see if I can remember what I like to say. I prefer processes over personalities, because personalities usually equal problems and processes equal profits.
You need both.
Of course you need both. But what I'm saying is, if you're only running off a bunch of personalities, right? And it's like, oh, the chef knows everything in their head. But if the chef gets run over, we're SOL because the recipes aren't cataloged and we don't know how to do this. Yes, of course you need both. But without systems, one person's gone, you're SOL.
Oh, agreed. And that was definitely for me a learning curve because of my nature of being, creative and just wanting to do the fun stuff.
Did you grow up was your mom a great cook? Was your grandmother?
No, she was a terrible cook. I'm the daughter of a Holocaust survivor. So apparently from my mother's stories, my grandmother was a fantastic cook, but my mother she could maybe make a really good orange juice roasted chicken, meatloaf. No, she was a terrible cook. I cooked for the family from when I was like 13, 14 years old.
So we're Jewish. We come from Morocco. My parents moved to Paris, and my mom was like, we could. Well, first of all, she would not let anybody clean a spoon. Besides my father, you can't clean, you can't help cook. So I learned through osmosis. Like literally, I just absorbed it in the air. And this is a funny story. Like someone says, well, you know, how'd you learn to cook? I said, watching my mom, but she would never let me cook. So one day she's at work. My mom had to go back to work because my dad, business failed, went bankrupt. So she went to work, and I get up on the counter and she had her cookbooks, and she had, I don't know, some Better Homes and Garden, little, you know, it's almost like a manual type of thing. And there was a crepe batter. And I said, oh, made the crepe batter, and I threw in some crushed almonds. She had this little thing that made crushed almonds, you know, crushed them up, a grinder. And I said, oh, I'll put some chocolate sauce on there. So I plus the recipe, and she would do the same thing. She'd take a recipe and look at another recipe, put her own twist. And then she had some Jamocha almond fudge ice cream from Baskin Robbins in the fridge. I made it the best crepes, cleaned everything up. She had no idea that I ever did that till years later. So that's where I learned, like, you wanted an invitation to my mom's house, and people say, oh, did you grow up having Moroccan cooking? Not really. She made couscous, but everything else was just a little of this, a little of that. It's just recipes she found, and she doctored up, and, you know, so I was very fortunate to have that influence, to grow up where food wasn't just like a necessity. It was definitely something, you know, and even gefilte fish. I'm guessing you make your own gefilte fish. So the first time I made gefilte fish, because I knew how my mom made it, and I asked her, I elevated, I did salmon and mahi-mahi, gefilte fish, you know, make it a little bougie.
Of course. Yeah, you look at all the recipes and then you make your own. That's sort of, I never, I mean, not never. I rarely follow a recipe unless I'm baking. I kind of love to read, you know, 5 or 6 or 10 recipes if it's the same thing. And then I say, okay, now I know what to do. And I just go do it.
Well, success leaves clues. If you read 5 recipes and 3 of them say these are the base things you need, then you know this is the base, right? It's sort of like mother sauces. And then you riff off the rest.
Right. But nothing ever comes out exactly the same when you do it that way.
No, but I mean, it still comes out good.
Delicious every time, but never the same. I remember one of my son's friends asked me for the recipe of pork chops that I had made, because we're not good at chops, but pork chops that I had made for him, I don't know, 8 years ago or 10 years ago. And I'm like, I have no idea what I made for you 8 years ago. Probably a lot of lemon and garlic and, you know, whatever.
My favorite cake was German chocolate cake. My mom would make it most Friday nights for my birthday. And unfortunately, that was the only recipe I never got from her before she passed. And I went through all of her stuff. It wasn't cataloged anywhere. And I was just like, oh my God, this is terrible. Because the cake part, you can make the cake. That's the easy part. It's the icing, right? So I get on the internet and I look like at 5, 6, 8 recipes. And I say, okay, one, which picture looks the same? No. This one's too blonde. You know, my mother's was a little more caramel, a little darker. And what about this and this? And I came up, I've got it cataloged, and it's like, I nailed it. Like it was maybe better. But
good for you.
So, not that I make it that often. So you end up transitioning more from corporate into, so what's your book of business now? Is it mostly weddings? Is it corporate events?
It's still corporate. We're probably about 70 to 75% corporate, and, you know, 15 to 20% social. We'd like to change that. We'd like that to be more like a 60-40 split. And we're working on that.
Why is that?
We just did a 1,500 person event for a product launch. So, you know, corporate events are a lot of things. We have several corporate dining clients where we go in and, you know, prepare food in their offices for their employees, you know, anywhere from like 75 to 200 people, 3 to 5 days a week. And that's obviously great business. And then, of course, there's the social and the weddings.
So going back to the corporate preparing, is that because during COVID, a lot of these cafeterias went out of business, so they don't have in-house food service, so it left a gap?
I think that the corporate dining is to get people back to the office. I think that the people didn't want to go, and they still don't go back to the office. So the perk of having like an actual hot, delicious meal that varies every day is a perk that gets people into the office.
Yeah, my daughter worked in private equity in LA for about 2 years, and they had a chef, and every day they would make something. And when she left, she goes, God, now I've got to take off all this weight I gained, because you go in and it's not like you're gonna just eat a little salad. They have a whole spread. So there's definitely an opportunity or potential opportunity for some of the people listening that have restaurants or catering companies is go to some of these bigger employers and say, hey, are you needing, and it might not be all the time, but it could be once a month or twice a month or once a week. Let us bring in something special that people do want to come into the office for.
Absolutely. I will tell you that it's difficult because the corporations don't want to spend tons of money on this. So you really have to have our systems in place so that we can maintain the quality, because they do want quality. Otherwise they could just order in from, Shake Shack.
Right.
So that to maintain the quality and still have some profitability.
Where do you find your inspiration? Because in the food business, I was telling someone, I said, when I was growing up, going out to eat is you went to Shoney's or you went to Chinese. That was it. A big celebration. We're going to Shoney's. There was nobody knew sushi from anything. They didn't know French cuisine. I think the first introduction to French cuisine was a French restaurant at Epcot Center when I was 18. So where do you get your inspiration? Because you've got to keep it fresh and new, and
Yeah.
you can't be selling the same baked chicken you were selling 40 years ago on the buffet, right?
Oh no, no. Your clients want every time it to be different and innovative and special. I mean, I find my inspiration all over the place. I go to the farmers market, I get inspired. Social media is sometimes inspiring, sometimes not. Sometimes it's just fun. I love reading cookbooks. Everybody who works for us loves
A
food.
foodie.
Yeah, they love food the same as I do. So we collaborate and we talk. We make lunch for the entire staff every day, and we sit around and enjoy lunch and talk about the restaurants we've been to. I mean, we're in New York City, so food is a
Oh, you
big
have a
deal.
lot to choose from. I definitely love great restaurants. I catalog them in my iPhone. Got a whole folder for all these restaurants, or if I cook something and it's something that I'm going to want to cook again, I've got pictures of it so I can refer back to it. And if I ever cook for friends, put them at the bar and it's like a cooking class, sit there and pontificate about because most people don't understand even some of the simplest things.
Absolutely.
So for me, I definitely enjoy that. So you talk about someplace in here I saw, or in the intro, micro weddings. My son got married a year ago. I probably should have talked to you. Well, anyway, my daughter-in-law probably wouldn't have wanted to hear anything I had to say because it was her wedding and I respected that. But tell me about micro weddings.
I think micro weddings came about probably during COVID because people were wanting to still get married, but didn't want to be around tons of people. And then I think maybe that grew post-COVID into that sense of intentionality and being surrounded by only the people that really are special and meaningful to you. But, we didn't search out micro weddings. Micro weddings kind of came to us. It fits within the culture of the company of wanting to sort of be intentional and treat each event with a lot of high touch and very bespoke. So it really works for the type of business we're running.
Yeah, I like the word bespoke. And I'm assuming they're spending way more per person for 25 or 30 people than if they had a 300-person wedding, because they're wanting everything to be the best of the best because it's such a small, intimate gathering.
Yeah, but yes, and so they're spending less money overall,
Right.
obviously, but they're spending more money, per head for sure.
Yeah. So, going through everything with my son and daughter-in-law getting married, I was like, are you sure you want to spend this much money on a wedding? Half the people at the wedding you don't care about, right? It's, your mom's third cousin that you have to invite. There's just a lot of that. I said, are you sure you don't want to take that same amount of money and everybody goes to Greece or Morocco or someplace where you could take it and just have a blowout time? No, we want to do this. And so, and I think my daughter saw all the crazy, the decisions and the craziness and all the stuff that went on, with her parents and just back and forth and all this stuff. And I looked at and she goes, man, I don't think I want this. I said, after going through this, let me explain what's going to happen. If you want a big wedding, you're going to get half as much as a smaller wedding, because I would rather give you more money for 20 people to have this, to use your word, bespoke experience that you're going to really look back on and say, wow, this was a week of my, the most incredible week of my life. Or, we went to French Laundry last month for my birthday. It was late celebration. It was with my son and his wife, my daughter and her boyfriend, and then his parents. The food, there's 3 or 4 things that were great, 3 or 4 things that were just okay. Like you would expect everything to be wow. But the service, the atmosphere in the courtyard was like one of the best meals I've ever had from that standpoint. Yeah. And I would rather take 10 people to French Laundry for a wedding reception than, okay, let's just have a buffet or, just something at a hotel. Yeah. But that's me. I think as I get older, I prefer more intimate gatherings.
I think the younger the people, the bigger the party they want.
I read something, and, I don't know if it's true or not. The stuff that goes around the internet, you don't fact check. Some things you think are real, and if you fact check them, you realize they're not. But I think there was a study, and it says the more money you spend on the wedding, the higher likelihood of getting divorced.
I'm not sure there's any factual truth to that, but who knows?
It could be, because a lot of times people care more about the wedding than the marriage.
Yeah. It also depends, I think, on how much money you have. What could seem like to you and I a ridiculous amount of money to spend on a wedding, for somebody whose, affluence is different than ours, it doesn't matter.
Well, New York has a whole different level of affluence. Right. Nashville might have 1 billionaire. New York could have 50 billionaires, right? Yeah. And, when you have multiple billions, whether you spend, you spend $5 million on that wedding, that's interest on your money this month. I mean, it's like, or interest on the interest. So I get it. There's levels to the game for sure. What's the most interesting micro wedding you've done? Particular location, menu? Did anybody fly you on a jet someplace cool?
No. Not even sure I can answer that question. I don't know that there was any one that stood out, that's going to say, wow, that was spectacular. I think, it's really so individual. I mean, it's really what the bride and the groom and the parents want. I think if we can, as long as we can deliver exactly what they want, as flawlessly as possible, then that's the best wedding we've done. And I think we've really not had any disasters.
That's good. Do you find that when people come to you to book an event, we'll say the corporate, they've worked with you, so they know your reputation and they're not sitting there nickel and diming you over everything because they've worked with you and they know what to expect and you deliver. And so in a corporate environment, there's that I just need you not to embarrass me, and I know what I'm getting. I'm not going to sit and beat you up over every line item. But when you're dealing with brides, do you find that are they comparing you, or they come in pre-sold, they know your reputation, and they're just going to trust you to take care of everything? What's the positioning?
I think they know our reputation. I think that we truly do sort of differentiate or define ourselves by the fact that whether you're a bride or a corporate client having a holiday party or having a board meeting, we treat you very individually with a lot of respect and a lot of care. And so I think that's our reputation both in the wedding and the corporate world.
That's good. Are you using AI in your business, or do you have any thoughts about what AI is going to do to your business in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
I have a lot of thoughts about AI. We do use AI in our business to help with like allergens, to help with writing menus, to help with um, email writing, templates. But really, that's about it. As far as, it's funny because I've been talking to a lot of friends who are, in the film business, and they're very frightened by AI because, there's no work. We still need chefs to cook the food. We still need salespeople to talk to you. We still need, servers and captains to serve you. So I'm not terribly concerned about AI taking, over our world, but I'm certainly concerned about AI taking over generally in the world. I have a lot of thoughts about AI.
Yeah, I've definitely talked to people about that. There's part of me who thinks I need to go find 100 acres in the woods and figure out how to live off the
I
land.
don't think we can run from it.
Maybe you can hide in a cave. I don't know. But you'd have to literally be so self-sufficient and off the grid. But even then, it's definitely interesting. I think there's a lot of things that are going to be miraculous. Like I saw something the other day, like you can get there's something like an AI, you can put your x-rays in and it'll read your x-rays, and it's really good. They're already doing it professionally, but like what's going to be available for analysis and stuff and the self-driving cars, just look at, I feel sorry for all these Uber drivers. Within 5 years, they're all going to be out of work because.
Yeah, I think our culture is going to change. I mean, a lot of people are going to be out of work. I think that culturally, we're in a technological big time of change, but we don't know what that's going to look like. We didn't, I grew up, I didn't have a cell phone, I didn't know that we were going to have like mini computers walking around with us every day. And that has changed the culture in our lives a lot. So I'm hoping that the really bad things we're thinking about AI are not, I'm a pretty positive person. So I'm hoping that it's not going to take over in a bad way.
You have to believe it's going to lead, like when factories started, there's probably a lot of people like, hey, the factory's making this widget that I was making by hand and I'm out of work. But, 10 jobs started, right? You had a secretarial pool, then the word processor put them out of business. But then there were 10 other things and the standard of living raised. It'll be interesting. Or maybe we don't have to work and it just magically appears. But then you end up what I call this sort of debauchery. If you have no purpose in life, and you're just consuming and bored, like playing video games in your basement, you've got to have wake up with some purpose, whether it's painting, raising chickens, you got to have something besides looking at a screen and being bored all day.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about the people who have passion and purpose. I think it's the people who don't that we need to worry about. Those are the people that could become problematic. But I think if you love to paint, or if you love to cook, or if you love to, if you have you love to create anything. I think if you didn't have to work as hard, maybe we'd be a happier culture. Maybe, it could be
I agree. If you have
positivity to it.
If you have passion and purpose, I definitely agree. So maybe what we need to do to pre-train everybody is do what happened when I was a kid. No devices, throw you out of the house at 6 a.m. and tell you to drink out of a garden hose and go figure out what you're going to do. We went fishing, we built forts, we
Yeah.
You know, we had plenty to keep us excited and occupied. So, and sort of closing this out, any advice for entrepreneurs out there in the catering industry? Any takeaways?
I always say that you should continue to think big, dream, have the biggest, best dreams, and don't be afraid of making mistakes, because you're gonna make mistakes, and just keep going and slow down, think about things before you really make decisions.
Good advice. Well, Deborah, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. We went in a lot of different angles, but all fun. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Michael.
You've been listening to Restaurant Catering Smarts. For more insights and episodes, make sure to follow along, subscribe, and share at caterzen.com.